Hey everyone, so we're back again with some Mark and Mark, and if you were with us last time, we're in Mark chapter 4, and last time we left off with Jesus explaining to us from Isaiah that the reason he uses parables isn't to help us and to clarify and to simplify, but in actual fact, Jesus uses parables so that we don't understand, those outside don't understand, that he uses them to obscure and to complicate things. But why would he do that? Why does he make his teaching harder to understand? Well, that's what we're going to look at here. First of all, let's just make some room, clean this up a bit. So here's this quote that we have here from Isaiah, and we looked at this first part, but the rest of the quote here at the end starts with otherwise. And otherwise is another challenging word. You know, the first word was so that. That was a very challenging word. And here, otherwise is equally challenging because otherwise signals that this is the other option that you don't want. You know, I'm hopping in my car so that I can go get some KFC. Otherwise, I'll need to eat the eggplant and coriander. And no one wants to eat eggplant and coriander. So you have, A, so that B, otherwise C. And we don't want that. So we've got, he speaks in parables, A, so that B, so that they don't understand. Otherwise, C, they might be forgiven. And we don't want that. But you think to yourself, wait a minute, but we do want that, don't we? Forgiveness is why Jesus came, isn't it? I mean, just back last time, in the end of chapter 3, all sins of all people can be forgiven. Back in chapter 2, Jesus came and he healed the paralytic who'd been lowered. Rather than healing his legs, he forgave his sins. And so, but now we don't want people to turn and be forgiven? It's like, you're confusing me. Jesus, what are we even talking about? In Isaiah chapter 6, the point is God had given Isaiah his job, his job description, and his job was to preach the truth to Israel. And the problem was that Israel had been rebelling against God and had been ignoring him and hating him, and this had been going on for hundreds of years. And it was time for Israel to be ejected from the promised land. It was time for judgment, and the conquering Assyrian army was going to come, conquer them, and they were going to be wiped out. And this was God's just, more than fair judgment. And, quite honestly, he had been very gracious to them for an extremely long period of time, but the time was up. And so Isaiah's job was to preach, and the more he preached, the harder the hearts of the Israelites would get. And the more he preached, the harder they would become, until finally the Assyrians would come and conquer them all. And here in Mark, Jesus quotes from that Isaiah passage, and Israel, and especially Israel's leaders, they've not been going very well. From almost the very start, they've been opposing Jesus. And we just saw in chapter 3, the beginning of chapter 3, they've now combined and plotted to destroy him. Right? This is totally the same pattern. Before, it was hundreds of years of disobedience and ignoring God and rejecting him. And this sort of behavior has now become Israel's native language, right? Jesus has arrived, and just back a couple of episodes ago, the scribes, the teachers of the law, think he's doing everything as an agent of Satan. Like, you don't get much more rejection of Jesus, rejection of God than that. You can see how messed up they are. And so Jesus, the reason why he teaches in parables is because the time is up. It is time for judgment to come to Israel, especially Israel's leaders, the Pharisees and the teachers of the law and the scribes and the priests and these kind of people. And so he speaks to them in parables so that they don't understand. And so to push them away and to harden them and to confirm them in their rejection. And the reason why is God is going to bring salvation to the world, and he's going to bring it not in spite of Israel's rejection, but he's going to bring salvation precisely because of Israel's rejection, as they reject Jesus and they butcher him on a Roman cross. God is going to use that very rejection to bring about his salvation of the world, which is, that's genius. And so the point of the parables is so that Israel, and especially Israel's leaders, don't understand. And so that's pretty heavy. But it's even more complex than that, because, this is a Markin burrito. We talked about that last time. And that means these two stories are kind of wrapped around each other. The two stories reinforce each other, inform each other, and they help us to understand each other. And so the parables are so that those on the outside don't understand. But here's the thing. Those on the inside, the 12, have been asking him about these parables. The 12, the insiders, they also don't understand. Right? Those on the inside don't understand. But that's weird, because the parables are so that those on the outside don't understand. So what does it mean if both insiders and outsiders don't understand? Well, what it means is the parables are a fork in the road. You can hear a parable and not understand it. And then what happens? Well, you have two options. Option number one is you can walk away. You can be like, forget this. This is rubbish. And so then the parable hardens you. And you're already a bit anti-Jesus to begin with, and now you reject him because of these parables, right? They kind of turn the volume up on your response. So that's option one. You could walk away. Or you could hear the parable and you don't understand it, but it draws you in. And you think to yourself, I need to understand this. I need to figure this out. I want to know. This Jesus seems like he's got important things to say, and it draws you in because you're already kind of leaning towards Jesus a bit, and now these parables draw you in. Now, like the 12 and those, you then go to him afterwards and you ask, help me understand it. Help me understand what you mean. And so it's not just that the parables push you to not understand. It's a bit more complex than that. And the Markin burrito is what's helping us here. What the parables do is they turn the volume up on where you already are. And so they either harden you or they soften you towards Jesus and they draw you in more. And so then in verse 14, Jesus then explains the parable and what it means. The sower sows the word. And some of it goes on the path, and this is where the birds came. Satan comes and takes away the word. Those sown on the rocky ground, they hear the word, receive it with joy, but they have no root. They are short-lived. When pressure or persecution comes, they immediately stumble. The thorns, who are they? Well, they're those who hear the word, but the worries of this age, the seduction of wealth, the desire for other things come in and they choke the word, becomes unfruitful. But the ones sown on good ground, they hear the word, they welcome it, and then they produce a crop 30, 60, 100 times. And it's all about how are you going to respond to Jesus? What kind of soil are you? The point of this whole Markin burrito is that it's not just about hearing Jesus' words, it's about how you respond to them. And the parables turn the volume up. And so the response that Jesus is looking for is for those who would turn away from whatever it is that they might be trusting in, and that they would turn and put their trust in him. That's the kind of soil that he's looking for, those who will welcome his words. And sometimes those that we expect to be on the inside will actually find themselves on the outside, and those that we thought would be outside actually find themselves on the inside. Well, that's all we have time for. We'll see you next time.